So if you're watching this video, you're probably thinking of living in Soho in Manhattan. Soho is a very, very trendy neighborhood in downtown Manhattan. Like every neighborhood, Soho has a lot of pros and cons to it. And there are a lot of people who love living in Soho, and then other people who feel like they would never want to live in Soho ever in their time in New York City. And I do see both sides of this. I'm gonna go over the pros and cons of this neighborhood. So I've never lived in Soho, but I did live in the neighborhood right next door to Soho, which is Tribeca. And I also worked in Soho. So I would be there every single day for work. Soho can get very, very, very congested with tourists or just people shopping in general in Soho because it's the main shopping neighborhood of New York City. You'll find high-end designers, these little boutiques, all these really, really cool shops, and also cafes and bars surrounding those shops because when people are shopping, they are hungry and they want to eat and drink. On Broadway specifically, in Soho, there's so much foot traffic from people shopping and then going to the other streets around Broadway to dine. So it can get very, very, very congested. And Broadway is where my office was. So I was literally there every day in all the chaos at all times. But if you go to some of the streets off of Broadway, like the side streets of Soho, there's going to be a lot less traffic there because, like I said, there are of course shops on the other streets of Soho. However, Broadway is the main strip for Soho. So the streets, not the avenues, tend to have a lot like coffee shops, boutiques, cafes, restaurants. If you live on a street in Soho, it's not going to be nearly as chaotic as an avenue in Soho. If you live on the avenues in Soho, there's going to be a lot of like pedestrians going by at all times. That's going to be the case for any avenue in New York City, but for some reason in Soho specifically, it just feels like very, very, very congested. There are some people who really, really love living in Soho because they love the action that takes place during the day there. They love being near the shops. They love being near some of the hottest dining in New York City. And at the time of filming this video, at least, Soho neighbors West Village, and West Village is one of like the hottest neighborhoods to live in, dine in, be in general. A lot of people like that Soho is near that neighborhood as well. Now, Soho at night is the complete opposite of what it is during the day. There is a lot of action during the day and a lot of people everywhere. However, Soho at night that's definitely not the case. So Broadway in Soho specifically, during the day, tons and tons of pedestrians, people everywhere. It's very, very chaotic. At night, it could be a ghost town. It's like the complete opposite. At least in my mind, I don't see any other like neighborhood in Manhattan have such a strong distinction between day and night as Soho does. To me, it's a completely different place at night than it is during the day. So I've always felt like I could have considered living in Soho, but I never really liked that at night it can get really, really, really quiet. There is a lot of dining in Soho. However, kind of like low-key places, some places are more hidden than other neighborhoods. There are people dining there at all times. So it's not like in the forefront like it is in other neighborhoods. So it's less subtle. You could be walking by a place with like 50 plus people dining inside, but you might not know because it's hidden. So Soho can be convenient because it's right in the middle of downtown Manhattan. You're in between the Village, the East Village, the West Village, Tribeca, and the Lower East Side. You're really in between all these really, really great neighborhoods downtown. You can get to these other neighborhoods very easily. Also, there's a good amount of subway options in Soho too, because it is a pretty big neighborhood. A lot of subway trains do pass by through Soho and make a stop there. It is a very convenient neighborhood based off where it is downtown. If you want to live in downtown and you want a convenient neighborhood, Soho could be a good option for you. Now, the cool thing about Soho is that some of the apartments that I've seen there are some of the most unique I've seen in my entire life. There is a lot of loft style apartments. A lot of buildings there are cast iron buildings. It's actually the most cast iron buildings in a neighborhood in the entire world. So if you've been in Soho, you've seen these type of buildings everywhere. Now, there's just a lot of really, really unique apartments in Soho. It's a very, very different vibe than other neighborhoods where you have the more standard New York City apartment. You're gonna have more unique properties in Soho. However, they're not cheap. They're very, very, very expensive. So the budget doesn't always work for everybody. Now in Soho, if you live on or off West Broadway, it's gonna be a lot quieter and a lot more of like a neighborhood feel than it would be living closer to Broadway. So more West Soho rather than Prime Soho, which is closer to Broadway. West Soho would be a lot more quieter and more like a neighborhood feel than it would be on Broadway in particular. So a lot of people get confused because downtown there's Broadway and then there's also West Broadway. And that's not the case uptown or midtown. West Broadway is like the quieter side of Soho and Broadway is where all the action and tourist and shopping is. Now, I did work in Soho. My office wasn't there. That was my residential real estate office. Now, a lot of people don't work in Soho. There are some big businesses there, and I did work in a commercial building. However, if you noticed in Soho, you don't see a ton of high-rise buildings. You see a lot of small boutique. You see a lot of smaller cast iron buildings. It's very, very, very different because you don't have a ton of people working there. The traffic that you see, like the pedestrian traffic, is really just people shopping and dining there. It's not people who are going to work for the most part. I was definitely like the rare case of somebody like trying to get to the office with my bags. So a lot of people who live in Soho don't work in Soho. A lot of them work in either Midtown or maybe they work downtown in the financial district or around that area. It's not really the neighborhood that you like live and work in that neighborhood. There are people who do it I'm sure, but it's very rare. Now, there are some good co-working options in Soho. If you do work from home, but you might be looking for like a co-working space to have as well, there is good options in Soho and like some of the surrounding areas. Now, is Soho good for dogs? Soho does have dog parks. Also, Soho isn't far from the waterfront. You can stay in Soho with your dog, but you can also get to the waterfront pretty quickly if you want to go walk your dog over there or go to one of the dog parks on the waterfront as well. I'm also not gonna lie, every New York City neighborhood has rats. Some neighborhoods have more of a problem than others. Now, I've always spent a lot of time in Soho, but I do have to say that Soho is probably one of the neighborhoods where I've seen the most rats in New York City. It's probably because there is, like I said, there is a good amount of dining there. So where there's a lot of dining, there's a lot of rats because they want food, they're hungry. So just watch out at night because it will be really quiet and there will be a lot of rats. So you will see those from time to time. Overall, I think that there's pros and cons to every neighborhood. And I do think that the neighborhood that you choose to live in is probably one of the most important decisions you'll make while living in Manhattan. I hope that this video helped you. And I can never really recommend a neighborhood to someone unless I really know more about that person's individual situation, who they are as a person, what they like, what their hobbies are, what's important to them, where they work. Those are all things that when I'm working with someone, I typically ask because I think that everyone's lifestyle is so different and what works for one person wouldn't work for another person and vice versa. So if you have anything to add about Soho or want to just share your experience, please let me know in the comments because I really just love hearing from you guys.